I think it's one of those things where so many people never ask them why, and so they never really realize the heart of what it is they're looking for in a career or in a particular position. And it's always very fun to see people kind of come to realize why it is they do what they do and the different ways they want to excel.
Hi, I'm Roger Kastner, and welcome to the What Do You Know to Be True podcast. In these conversations, I talk with ordinary people about their extraordinary skill, their superhero power, and the meaningful impact it has on others. The goal is not to try to emulate or hack our way to a new talent. Instead, I'm interested in what inspired our guests to develop their talent, how they think about their superhero power, and the impact it has on others. The intention is to learn more about their experience with their superhero power, and in doing so, maybe we can learn something about the special talent in each of us that makes us unique. Writing a resume is hard for most people. Whether it's challenging to think about what specifically we've done or identify the impact or contribution we've made, there's usually a frothy mix of doubt, ego, imposter syndrome that gets in the way. Okay, I'll say it. For most people, the process sucks. What starts out as an intention for a tight 2-page resume suddenly balloons into a 5-page list of achievements, starting with that Attaboy award you received in your first job back in high school. Sure, it's not relevant to the job you want now, but darn it, my work was honored and recognized. Okay, maybe that might be a little too biographical. It's daunting to try to capture your experience and capabilities in a way that will get noticed amongst the hundreds, if not thousands, of resumes flooding the inboxes of hiring managers and recruiters. For someone who writes resumes professionally, that person would have to be part creative writer, part instructor, part coach, part magician, part Buddhist monk. Buddhists say that life is suffering, and I'm sure the last time you wrote your resume, it was a clear example of suffering. I don't know yet if our guest, Keelan Hawkins, practices Buddhism or does magic tricks. But one of the things that Keelan does do is help people rewrite their resumes and coach them to craft their creative narrative. And based on my experience of writing my own resume, anyone that can make that process better, who can help us craft a better story and a better resume that gets calls from recruiters, that is undoubtedly a superhero power with a meaningful impact on others. Well, Keelan not only can help, she brings a thoughtful process and approach to that task that invites the individual to explore their purpose and their impact, to be vulnerable in understanding what is meaningful for the individual. It is from that understanding that a relevant and differentiated story can begin to be told. Keelan has 2 master's degrees, one in creative writing and poetry from Bowling Green State. The other master's is in rhetoric and composition from Appalachian State. And it's not hard to imagine how poetry and rhetoric would be helpful in writing a resume and crafting a career narrative. She is also a coach, an instructor, a writer, and in this conversation, we get to hear how this background of seemingly separate journeys weaves together to create an amazingly strong and resilient tapestry that is used to empower and inform the work. Keelan and I just met recently when she was helping me rewrite my resume. While I thought my resume was pretty good before, I can confidently say it's much better now. Also, I think my story that I tell about my career, about my vocation, is stronger now as well. And what struck me about the process she uses was that she engaged me in a series of questions that were an invitation to go deeper than the, what do you do for company X? What did you do for company Y? What she did over those 60 minutes was tactical, surgical, empathic, and it was joyful. Keelan's superpower is not only in making the process easier. What she does is empower people to be better equipped to tell a more clear, more relevant career narrative and having a better resume that gets attention. I'm excited to have this conversation with Keelan. She has a superhero power that most of us can benefit from, and I'm curious to learn more about her process and how she thinks about crafting career narratives. If you're ready, let's dive in. Good morning, Keelan. Welcome to the podcast.
Morning. Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I'm really excited to have you here because I think you do something that is valuable to so many people in helping them not only rewrite their resumes but really craft a career narrative. And in fact, I know it's helpful for other people because it was helpful for me when we first met a couple months ago. You you helped me come up with a not only a new resume but also a career narrative that was productive in my job search. And I don't know if I shared this with you, but going into our first session,
Hmm.
I wouldn't say I was skeptical, but I over the years, as I've shared my resume with coaches and with recruiters, I've received a lot of positive comments and not a lot of like feedback of things to update. And I've also helped friends write their resumes, and I've always thought, okay, I'm pretty good at this. I know how to write a resume. I know how to help other people. And so I wouldn't say it was a totally closed-minded, fixed mindset on it, but it was a little bit of like, okay, Keelan, show me what you got. And then we go into the session, and I expected a certain, a certain amount of questions. I expected sort of a, haha, it's a good resume, can't really help you out here that much. And instead, you walked me through what ultimately felt like a coaching session. You were asking me questions that made me think and not just respond. I wasn't just telling you, okay, I won this award or I, achieved this, but really thought about, okay, what are the things you're most proud of, and what are the things that you are wanting to shape in the next experience? What are those things that spark joy? And so it was through the questions that you were asking me, got me into a different mindset and got me really excited to learn more about what you know about what you do. You have a structured approach, you have a format, you obviously have thought about this, and you care about this process and the impact it has on others. So, one, super appreciative of what you did for me, and knowing that you do this for a lot of other people. And it's when people are looking for jobs, when people are trying to, and not only trying but probably struggling to come up, not only write the resume, but to come up with a new career narrative to be able to talk about what they do and what they're passionate about and how that translates into an actual job and get them that job. That is a life-changing moment. And you're helping to enable and empower that. And so in the background, as we're having our session, I'm thinking, ooh, Keelan has a superhero power that I want to learn more about, which is perfect for the podcast. So I was so appreciative when you agreed to be here and be on the pod. So thank you so much for the work that you did with me, the work that you do with other people, and for being willing to share with us a little bit more what that's like.
It's weird to say that I am passionate about resumes and technical writing and, cover letters and LinkedIn bios, but um, I am. I like it. And more than that, I like how it's a way that, someone who just went and got an English degree can still feel like you're serving other people and helping them through such a difficult, stressful transition period. It's really fun, I think, because I get the opportunity to honestly surprise people from what they would expect and kind of pull them out of their own heads a little
Mm,
bit and get
mm-hmm.
them to stop like worrying and almost obsessing about this whole thought of where's my next job going to be, what am I going to do, pull them out of that and really just help them focus on the fact that, like, no, you've done a lot already. Like, you're a worthy person. And if you can showcase that, then the job will come.
That's a lot more than just taking words and putting it on paper. And this is why I'm so glad we're having this conversation, because it's that process. I mean, you're going into it empathetic. You're going into it thinking about what the other person is going through, and the anxiety, the stress, the concern, and taking them out of that to be able to get closer to their better self, which is exactly where they need to be when they're actually telling their career narrative, when they're writing their resume, when they're talking to a hiring manager, when they're thinking about what's that next thing they want to do. That we spend a lot of time at work. We should absolutely be doing something that connects to our purpose, our passion, and something that we love.
Agreed.
So in it, I think most people are very familiar with rewriting a resume and the struggle that is. But we're talking about also crafting a career narrative, and I was hoping you could help us understand, what do you mean when you say crafting a career narrative? What does that look like, and what does that mean for people?
If I could tell people just one thing, change the cultural conversation about it in one way, I would say, like, it's not just a boring statement of this is where I was, this is the work that I did, and really kind of shift the focus and to let people know that it's not just where have you been, what have you done, but it's, how did you specifically approach the tasks that were asked of you? Like, what did you bring to the table that only you can? Because 100 people can have the same job, same title, same company, and there will be 100 unique ways to approach the roles and responsibilities of that same position. So, do you bring integrity? Do you bring honesty? Do you bring empathy? What is that core characteristic of yourself that you bring to this job? Because a job is just a job, you know, but it's the way that you act in that job, the natural characteristics you have. When they shine through, like, that's what makes it a career. That's what makes you the right person for that particular job. That's what's defines your success. And a lot of people really, I think, have a hard time understanding that. And so that's what I try to tell people whenever I say, like, it's not just a resume. You're crafting a career narrative. You're talking about how you specifically, with all of your empathies and all of your knowledge and experiences, you're talking about how you walked into these different positions and how you made them into a success, like whether it's the company, the team you were working for, what have you. So many people just focus on, I made this metric. And it's just like, yeah, but how did you do that? What aspects of yourself did you bring to the role to really flesh it out? Like, if you're great at client relationship management, is that because you understand how to bring humor and levity to those roles, to those relationships you're building with clients and partners? Is it because you have a very clear approach to communicating very difficult technical information? And so they like working with you because they always understand what they're going to get. You know, it's not just writing a resume, it's showcasing your willingness to take your integrity, your character, and put it into a role to find success for a team and a company.
This is this may I'm thinking about Simon Sinek's work around the start with why, and the power of why, the how, the what, with what being the last thing, and the resume. To what you just said, so many people think of their resume as the what. You just talked a lot about the how. Like, how do you approach this work? How did you achieve that metric? Or how do you build relationships? And I think that is a lot of what hiring managers actually are looking for. Achieving the metric, yeah, you have to do that, but how you do it is what differentiates yourself. Is there anything there about the why why you do what you do, um, that you want to explore when you're working with clients?
That is honestly the first question that I usually ask people, which I guess you would know,
Mm-hmm.
um, is like that what is your next dream role? And it's so funny. The first thing that they'll throw out will be like a number, for like a salary. And I'm like, hmm, okay. Let's try again, friend. What's like, I mean, if you, and don't get me wrong, if you just want to show up, get your paycheck, totally fine. At least you know that's your why,
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, even with people who very much are just like, oh, well, I just want this position because this is where I should be in my career. And I'm like, okay, so from that response, I am getting that you're going to be very like punctual, very driven, like you're going to make these things happen because that's your why. Some people will talk about like just showing up for the paycheck as being a bad thing, but I'm like, no, like that's just as good of a reason as anything.
Mm-hmm.
And every why can kind of help you start to guess the what later down the road,
Mm-hmm.
or the how that people are kind of achieving these metrics. So really asking people their why. Sometimes it's they want that higher salary, which I'm like, okay, so now we can talk about, you know, what you bring to the table that makes your experiences worth that salary. Some people, their what is like, oh, I just like, that connection. Or their why is like, I just like that connection. I like interfacing with people. And then it's just like, okay, cool. We kind of know a little bit about what we need to highlight with your materials down the line, because we know that collaborative aspect is
Mm.
kind of what's going to be important. Really just sitting down and asking yourself, why am I doing X thing? Is a great place to start with a career narrative, because once you know why you're doing a thing, then you can kind of start to see, okay, this is my why. That's going to contribute to how I go about accomplishing these goals and what my focus is on whenever I'm in these tasks. And then you get to the what, so you can actually kind of reverse engineer your resume based on kind of like that information. So I like to start with the why. It's really funny when sometimes people will give you like a little bit of a surface level why, and then you'll just be like, okay, and then you prompt them a little bit deeper and they're like, well, actually it's because I like to do X, Y, and Z things. Or actually, I am wanting this higher salary, but I also do want to be in this like an executive level position or a director level position, because I do like to mentor people. And so it's funny how um, sometimes people will give you a certain why and they have it like on lock. They're like ready. They're like, this is my purpose. And then you actually ask them to follow up on it and they're like, oh, I actually like doing this other thing too, and I like doing this. And I don't know, it's just so interesting to me that once you encourage people to think a little bit more uh, deeply about why it is they are seeking certain career moves or trajectories, uh, I think it's one of those things where so many people never ask them why. And so they never really realize the heart of what it is they're looking for in a career or in a particular position. And it's always very fun to see people kind of come to realize why it is they do what they do, and
Mm.
the different ways they want to excel.
And I can see how tactically it's really helpful for you to understand their why, because then you know what needs to be highlighted in all the materials. But more importantly, I could see how if you're going to, especially for those people who haven't explored their why, um, super helpful for them to go through that exploration, to think about what's that next level and the next level. And also for them to be able to incorporate that language, because I'm going to assume it's not best practice to answer the why question in an interview with a salary level or a title. It's probably better to show the why and the how of why you do what you do, and why it's passion, something that's passion, and why it's going to be something that gets you out of bed in the morning to show up, and put in the long hours to do the work. So I can see on multiple levels how it's beneficial, for your coachee, for your client, to explore the why, but also it's helpful for you in helping them craft that narrative, as well as produce those deliverables.
It very much is. It's one of my clients actually recently helped me realize that um, if you have really fully explored your kind of like why, what, and how for your resume, and really kind of figured out um, basically what drives you to do these types of roles, then honestly, going from creating your resume to acing an interview for the type of position that you're looking for, I don't want to say it shouldn't be that hard, because talking to people is hard. Anytime someone asks me a direct question, I usually just deer in the headlights. Like, oh, what are your hobbies? Suddenly, I don't know. I've never had a hobby before in my life. But you should have an idea of how to answer a lot of interview questions if you've really appropriately kind of thought about the robustness of why you are searching for particular positions. One question again that you would know that I like to ask clients is like, what uh, messaging, what key themes do you want to come across in your resume materials? It's a question I got from my team lead, Lindsay Waters. She's amazing. Um, but I love that question, because people are always just like, what, what? And I'm like, what messaging? Like, what key themes? It's like, I already know what you can do, but like, what character traits do you want to show through your materials? And I think those types of questions are the differentiators, those differentiating factors that will help you stand out in such a competitive job market. And those, like, considering those types of questions are also what's going to kind of preemptively prep you for those difficult interview questions as well. So I feel like it's all kind of related in a way that we don't really talk about enough.
Do you find that people are reluctant to lead with the themes, to lead with the whys, because that maybe they intuitively know that's what's going to drive the decisions more so than the what they've done, or the what they've achieved?
I would, yes, I would say so. And I would also say that, like, I think so many people, they're reluctant, maybe not because they even realize that that is going to be what drives the decision, but because they've just never been prompted to think that deeply about it. Or, I mean, one thing that I see a lot, is that a lot of people don't consider, the why and the how, because to them, what they do is so commonplace. They're just like, oh, well, I just do X task. Like, it's not a big deal. And I'm like, okay, well, yeah, but like, managing $100 million account for a global $1 billion company might be just another day to you, sir. But I would cry if someone said that I had to do that. You know what I mean? And so I think a lot of it is like just the unfortunate fact that so often our daily skills and talents go so underappreciated that people start to think, oh, well, I guess, if I'm not being recognized for this on a daily basis, that must just mean that everyone can do it. And it's like, no, no, no. Most people that I work with, I'm just like, I would fold like a wet paper towel if I had to do what you do. So it is cool. It is special. Like, there are these really cool characteristics and methods that you bring to this role. But I think so many people just downplay their own achievements. And I'm guilty of it too. I spend all day, every day talking to people like, no, your like talents are super special and unique. Like, no, like there's this robust narrative here. Like, no, you can do this. You're doing great. And then someone's like, what do you do? And I'm like, I just write resumes. Not a big deal. I just do the whole make words pretty thing.
Isn't that interesting how it's very easy to flip into the role of the client or the coachee, and what you're really what I'm getting out of this conversation is that you're helping people go into that vulnerable space to be able to explore the why, to be able to, and maybe it's the first time, or maybe it's something they've done multiple times, and it's beginning to help me understand um, why I felt so seen and lit up when we talked, because those questions kind of pushed me into that. It's it's vulnerability time, and some of us are kind of vulnerability junkies, and love to share this stuff, and I would imagine there's not many of us, but it's probably why I was pretty excited in the session. And you're probably a better judge of that, because you get to see when people are, when you put that invitation out there to be, explore your why and to be vulnerable. Some people probably jump right in, and some people are like, oh, nope, not going to do it.
People hunker down so hard sometimes, and they're just
Mm.
like, and it's kind of like the joke I made earlier when I said that I always forget all of my hobbies as soon as someone asks me directly. I've had some clients. I'll be like, okay, so like, what makes you, what helps you stand out, and they're just like, I've never been special in my life ever. Oh my gosh. And I'm just like, oh, no. This isn't the spiral that we're, it's like, nope, you got to talk yourself up. And they're just like, whoa, but, so I will be the first to admit that it is very difficult for a lot of people to do. But I would also encourage everyone to give it a try, because it is so worthwhile, like
Mm-hmm.
I think so often, we look externally to metrics, or to hearing from colleagues, or superiors at work, like our bosses and stuff. We look there for this type of a validation, but it's like, no, you need to validate within yourself that you are great at this thing. Like, you wouldn't have all of this knowledge about it, you wouldn't have done this for 1 year, 3 years, 10 years. It's like, just by that alone, just by the nature of you being so interested in it, that you think it's worthwhile to seek out more work in it or more knowledge about it, like that makes you worthwhile. That makes you
Mm.
an expert of this skill, this role, whatever it is. And so it's you have some people that definitely hunker down, and you kind of have to definitely coach them through, like, no, you can do this. You are doing great. You do have these skills. I promise. So but it's really fun. That's I won't say it's fun. That's rude. I would love it if they had a bit more uh, self-esteem about their position, but it is also nice sometimes to be able to be the person that's just like, hey, you got this, like.
Yeah. Uh, um, wow, what a gift that is to give to someone who is, is not aware of, their purpose, their why. You're helping them connect to that meaning, but then also to validate that what they do is valuable, and who they are is valuable. That's got to feel good.
Yeah, well, I mean, I feel like it's what you're trying to do for people on this podcast too, so
Well, thank you. I appreciate that, and yeah, I see some of those parallels. But I my job's easier. I get to talk to people who are already exploring, but you're actually working with people, helping them explore, helping them be vulnerable, and find that sense of worth. And oh, thank you. That that's an awesome gift to be able to give. So speaking of being inspired, what or who inspired you to help others craft their resumes and craft their career narratives?
I have no idea. No, in college, I got it in my head that I was going to be a counselor,
Mm.
even though it depends. It depends on how much of a bandwidth I have to listen to people talk about their problems. It was so funny. All my friends in undergrad, because I was getting a dual degree, so Bachelor of Arts in English and then a Bachelor of Sciences in psychology, and the English just because why not? I've just always naturally been good at it. But I was just like, no, I'm going to be a counselor, and my friends in undergrad were always just like, are you sure about that?
I love
And
how our friends know us sometimes better than us.
it wasn't until like halfway through my senior year that I was just one day I was like, yeah, they were right. It's like I've come this far, so I'm gonna get the degree, but like they were right.
Mm.
Um, but I still always kind of like I like just talking to people, like I like talking to people and hearing about their aspirations, and then also like I recognize that not everyone can write well. For a lot of people, writing is like their biggest fear. And so it just took a while to kind of come to the idea that what is a degree what is a career field that I can go into where I get to like kind of see how people tick, see how people think, and then also use my ability to write well to kind of like help people possibly do that. I taught in college for a while, thinking that maybe that would be the thing to do, and so I got the master's in rhetoric and composition, and that was just kind of my thing. I just keep going to grad school until I figure it out. And then finally, when I was in my third graduate program, I finally was just like, oh, okay. So I love working in writing centers. What is the adult version of working in a writing center? And, resume writing. It made sense in my head. Right now that I say it out loud, I'm like, that maybe doesn't track, but
Yeah, because I think I love in preparation for this conversation how we were talking about, okay, is it writing resumes, which is really valuable in and of itself, based on the how you do it and the why you do it, and that's not just, you're not just producing documents of people's, responsibilities and where they've worked and dates, and it's not just the data, it's the process, it's the why they do what they do, and it's how you go about doing that process. But we came up with this idea around crafting career narratives, because that document isn't the value of that document isn't the document itself, it's the story that it tells, and it's the story that you help empower those individuals to be able to tell, that maybe they had not even been aware of before the phone call began with you.
yep, yep. And that's whenever I look back, because sometimes I'll be like, oh, I don't, my trajectory seems a bit odd. But when I look back, I entered a graduate program and started teaching uh, first year composition to college kids. And I was just like, wow, I love chatting with these students and, you know, like bringing ideas to the table and bouncing things off and having discussions. And I was just like, absolutely hate grading. I never want to grade another paper in my life. If I ever have to, it'll be too soon. Um, and so I was like, all right, maybe not that. And then I thought about how I also love working in writing centers. And the one thing that you learn whenever you start to do any sort of training for working in a writing center full time, because that's the next thing I thought I would do, is that we always have this motto where it's like you're not addressing the paper. Like the paper isn't the point. Whatever paper a student brings into the writing center, that's not the point. You're trying to address their A, their capability with writing, but B, more importantly, honestly, their relationship to writing. I would have so many students that came in and they would tell me the most horrific stories and about like just these awful experiences that they'd had with English teachers that made them absolutely despise writing, and I realized that a lot of them have such a limited view of what writing is and is supposed to mean, so I'd always tell people, like, it's not writing, it's just communication. You writing this paper, like, don't think of it as writing a paper. You're just figuring out the way that you communicate best. And I loved having those conversations with students. But naturally, the way that you have a career in writing centers is you become a writing center director and you don't even get to talk to people about writing. You just have to do all the boring management stuff. And I was just like, okay, nope, try again. And that's when I luckily was approached by a recruiter at Ronstadt. And I was just like, career coaching, perfect. The perfect balance, getting to help now, professionals reimagine their relationship with these type of technical documents, reimagine their relationship with resumes, with cover letters, with any other sort of like technical communication, and help them find out how to best communicate their kind of like self in their material.
I really loved what you just said about how as a writer, really focusing on that relationship with the story you're trying to tell. I've done a lot of writing, whether it's blogs, whether it's a book, whether it's prepping for podcasts, and I've never thought of it that way. I've never thought about the idea of like, what's my relationship with this story? And I definitely feel like I'm able to work on and better understand that story through writing. But I've never thought of it as, my relationship with the topic, with the subject of what I'm writing. Yeah, the learning continues. Thank you for that. That was awesome.
Of course.
What do you know to be true about crafting resumes and crafting career narratives?
The process is different for everybody. Everybody has their own idea about what a resume should look like. Some people swear that it has to be either one full page or two full pages, no half pages, because that's unprofessional and they'll think it makes you look bad. And then there's some people who are just like, you can't use color at all because that's, distracting. And then other people are like, you have to use color because if you don't, that's boring. And everyone focuses on all these rules, everyone thinks they have like this magic formula about what's going to make a resume stand out. And like, are there rules that you need to follow to make sure that your resume will pass through an applicant tracking system, a scanning software? Yes, there are. I will admit that. But beyond that, you really just have to focus on how you are going to come across on the page to a hiring manager looking at your resume. Like, that's where the meat is, you know what I mean? Like, that's the bread and butter, is figuring out how to communicate your character values and those things that are most important to you and those things that help you stand apart from the rest. Like, that's what's really going to help you land that job. And I feel like I don't see anyone really talking about that because it is the harder thing, undoubtedly. But B, I'm just so tired of seeing all of this, oh, do X, Y, and Z, and you'll have the perfect resume. It's like, no, there's no formula. There's no formula for being a person. There's no one formula for doing any number of jobs. Just find whatever it is that you truly believe sets you apart. And if you can't find that, then ask a friend. Friends are great hype men. And if your friends aren't great hype men, then you need to find new friends. So So get one of them to just tell you some of your best qualities, right? They don't have to know anything about your job, but just get them to tell you what they think some of your best qualities are. And then see if you can tell that you use those qualities in your work, because the chances are you do. And the chances are that's what makes you as an individual so worthwhile, worthy of the job, worthy to know. If other people see it in you, then it must be true, because, if 5 people, 10 people see these characteristics, even if you don't believe it, like, it's like, who's more likely to be wrong, you or everyone in your life? So accept that you're good at these things, internalize it, and then use that to go and do the thing that you want to do, and hopefully make someone else's day better while you do it.
What did you believe early on about crafting resumes and career narratives that you've come to learn to not be true?
So for the longest time, I thought that I would hate the process of writing resumes. And then it wasn't until I actually was working as a graduate writing consultant at Appalachian State University that I just kind of, I guess, naturally told someone, like, oh, don't think of it as writing a resume or an application for like grad school or something. I was like, think of it as you just trying to showcase your best self. And that's when I started to kind of, like we said, rewrite the idea of a resume into something more like a career narrative within my own mind. And that's when I started to realize, through helping other people write theirs, like, oh, this is actually way cooler than I thought. This is like much more human centered, human focused than I thought, because I had always seen it as a kind of a colder, kind of an objective document. But when you get down to it, it's much more personal, I guess, if you're doing it right, and if you're trying to showcase how you can stand out from the rest. So I would say that's what I learned, is like, if you're approaching it as simply, I go X place to do Y thing and achieve Z and that's it, then chances are you might be approaching it in a bit of a disconnected way.
Mm-hmm. And this very much connects with what you've been saying throughout this conversation around changing, reframing the relationship with the story. And it seems like the arc that you just told was when it went from technical writing to creating a story and being able to explore the relationship with that story, and then being able to tell the story in a way that best represents that individual. Love that.
Yeah.
If someone doesn't have access to a professional resume writer, what are the one or two things that you would suggest that they do to craft a better story?
This is going to be one of those really pedantic things, but I just want to clarify. I have been talking a lot about crafting a personal narrative. You do not want to use first person. So many people use first person in a resume. Please don't. It's a weird convention thing, but it annoys most people. So it is kind of an art to figuring out how to write about yourself in third person in a connected way. But that would be one thing I would say, is like, don't remember that it's still a professional document, but also I would encourage people to, if you don't have access to a professional, I would encourage people to make use of those around you. So your friend, your partner, your, high schooler, high school child, like, they don't have to be a professional resume writer in order to read your resume and list out, let's say, ask them, what are the top 5 skills that stand out to you? What character judgments do you think you can make from reading this resume? And, does it seem to be an appropriate length? Ask them to write those 3 questions down on a sheet of paper and then fill them in. And if what you see reflected there isn't what you want your resume to come across as, then you have to go back and do a bit of finagling. But definitely make use of whoever you have available to you, because they will be able to see things in your resume. And honestly, they might even then be able to offer a few suggestions, for how you go about tasks that can help you make your resume more robust.
That actually sounds like a good life practice of asking friends, family members, like what are the 5 things that I'm good at, or what are the 5 words that you think of when you think of me? And if you don't like what you read, you might need to change things. Are you ready for the lightning round?
Uh-oh, sure. What is the
Yeah.
lightning round?
Well, you're about to experience it. So, first question, fill in the blank. Crafting resumes and career narratives is
Fun.
love that. Who in your life provides crafting career narrative support for you?
My partner.
Mm,
Yep. Is
love that.
basically the person that I turn to all the time, and I'm just like, hey, does this sound stupid?
Yeah, I'm sure the first response is always entertaining, and the second one is the valuable one, right?
Every time.
Is there a practice or routine that helps you grow, nurture, or renew your ability to help others with their career narratives?
Inviting the clients that I work with to share more than they think they're supposed to on a call, because so many people get caught up in this headspace of like work and stress. So I would say it can be a lot for me too, trying to help these people in this difficult and stressful time. So really just encouraging people to share a little bit more.
Do you have a favorite book or movie that you would recommend that sort of captures this art of crafting a narrative?
It actually has absolutely nothing to do with writing resumes. Nothing at all. But there is a book called Triggering Town, and it's actually a book about it's either a book about writing poetry or just about creative writing more generally. A lot of the advice in the book is really just different ways that you can get yourself out of your own headspace and get yourself a bit more connected with just the world around you. And I think that that's something everyone who is trying to write these resumes could really use, because so many people, they think, oh, well, if I just focus harder, if I just nitpick every single word used, and it's just like, no, A, that's not necessary. B, that will annoy everyone around you. It's like, take a step back, just focus on the essentials, and you'll be fine.
What is one thing that gets in your way of crafting resumes and career narratives?
Every criticism that I have lobbied at people in general, it's one of those funny things where it's like I give career advice to people all day, every business day, sometimes on the weekends. And yet people will be like, oh, I need a good example of like a resume, or oh, I need a good example of a LinkedIn, bio. Like, can I use yours? And I'm like, absolutely not. It looks awful. I'm a person. I'm not immune. Um, I've put a bit more effort recently into making my materials kind of up to snuff with what they should be given my career. But yeah, I would say I also have a hard time getting out of my own headspace. And yeah, my clients have been very helpful getting me to see the value in my work.
Oh, that's lovely.
Yeah.
What word or phrase describes what crafting resumes and career narratives feels like when it's had a positive effect?
Life-changing. It's funny because I mean that hopefully for the person that I've been working with, but for myself as well. Like it really is fulfilling work.
Yeah, I could see that, and I've felt it when we did it. How it sort of it lights the other person up, and it lights you up when it's having a positive impact, and that's probably very motivational to jump on that next call, to work with that next client, to see, okay, what are we getting into? But know that if you go through that process, if you focus on the right things, you're going to generate that same impact. That's awesome. If a listener wanted to get a hold of you or follow you, where do you want to point them to?
I am on LinkedIn, and it's literally just my name. So it's linkedin.com, Keelan Hawkins. If anyone is bold enough to actually want to reach out to request any sort of like help, advice, because I do also offer freelance resume writing services. Just shoot me an email and I can give you kind of like a price for a consultation. It's again just keelanhawkins@gmail.com.
Keelan, thank you so much for taking the time to share with us your approach, how you think about the work that you do, and the wisdom that you've developed over the years of doing this work, the gift that you give to people to get out of their head and get out of the rules that they've heard of how to tell that story or how to write those documents, and get them thinking more about what's the story that they want to tell, and not like what were the responsibilities, or if you have 1.5 pages, it's got to be either 1 page or 2 page, or even getting them to stop using the I need to stop using the it might still be there. I really do appreciate you, your process, your thoughtfulness, and the impact it's having with the people you work with, because I think we need more people to be aware of their story, more people to be showing up as their true self in the workplace, and for people to embrace going into that vulnerable space, being brave enough to be vulnerable and really discover what is their career narrative, really getting more connected with their purpose, and then being able to live that more fulfilled life, because I think everyone benefits when that's happening. So thank you for being part of the process to help people get there and have a wonderful impact in our communities and our world. And when people are working in a role that is achieving their purpose, that is being meaningful, they leave work and they have a positive impact on their communities, on their family, on the people that they interact with. And that makes the world a better place for all of us. So thank you for doing that.
Of course, of course. It sounds cheesy, but it really is my pleasure. It's funny, I talk to clients and some of them will feel so bad about taking up your time. And I'm just like, no, like it may sound dumb, but this is literally what I love to do. It's like I'm always just grateful when clients show up and they want to have those conversations and they want to be invested. So it's what I love to do. That's why I do it. And I hope that more people can come to kind of embrace this method of approaching these materials, and also just their jobs and their lives, because whatever you're currently doing, it is worthwhile and it is worth doing and it's worth celebrating.
I love in how in helping other people make their stars shine brighter, it makes your star shine brighter. That's
Hey,
lovely.
a rising tide lifts all ships, right?
There you go. There you go. Well, Keelan, thank you again. Take care.
Of course. Thank you.
Okay, I hope you were taking good notes on this one. The next time you're writing your resume or preparing for an interview, I hope you can remember the nuggets of wisdom that Keelan shared today, and have someone who can help us discover. Okay, I hope you were taking notes on this one. The next time you are writing your resume or preparing for an interview, I hope you can remember the nuggets of wisdom that Keelan shared today, and have someone who can create the space for you to explore your purpose and your calling. I love how Keelan created that for me when we worked together on my narrative and my resume. I love how she invites people to explore their purpose, to be vulnerable and put words to a purpose that some people may have never thought about before. And in doing so, Keelan is helping us uncover that relationship we have with our own career narrative and rewrite it in a way that is honest, authentic, powerful, and that is inspiring to us. And if we're inspired by it, I bet other people will be too. Thank you, Keelan. I'm so grateful for you sharing your perspectives and experience. I really love how in making other people's stars shine brighter, it brightens your star as well. In stepping away from this conversation, I think the reflection question for us is, what is our relationship with the story we have about our own careers, our own vocation? And to what extent is our superhero part of that story? I'm not sure. If you're not sure what your superhero power is, one of the easiest ways to learn about it is to ask a trusted friend or colleague. As a heads up, they're likely going to ask you what you think their superhero power is, so be ready with a response in advance. What Do You Know to Be True is a 3 Blue Pens production. I'm your host, Roger Kastner. We are recording on the ancestral lands of the Duwamish and Suquamish people. To discover the ancestral lands of the indigenous people whose land you may be on, go to native-lands.ca. Okay, be well, my friends. My old joke about film is cheap used to be funny when they actually had film, and now it's just bits and bytes.
Another resume writer comes on the podcast, they'll tell you something completely different. but that's
just for that, you have an exclusive. Well, you'll be the only resume writer on.
There we go. Maintain my integrity.
There you go.
If you ever need a pick-me-up, at least I would hope we all have that one friend. I know I do, where it's just like, hey man, I'm feeling down. And then you just get yelled in your ear like, oh my gosh, you're doing so great, blah, 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 blah. You're the best, you kick ass, blah, 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 blah. And it's just like, thank you, I needed that. All right, love you. Hey, does this sound stupid?
Yeah. I'm sure the first response is always entertaining and the second one is the valuable one, right?
Every time.
They might be a little triggered to begin with, but since you're going to Trigger Town anyway, you might as well have a manual.
Yep, may as well read the book.
No, I don't like that. That's a good example of something I'm going to edit out.